Greetings and welcome to the Daily Bread Bible study as we are looking at day number 7 for Tuesday, January 7th, 2020, looking at Genesis chapter 24 and 25. So we got a short one for you today, but full of good things. So we will get to see the closing down of Abraham's story, and we will focus a little bit more on what's happening with Isaac. So we see that Abraham sends his oldest and probably wisest servant to find a wife for Isaac from the land of his relatives, which is important mainly because Abraham is not excited about finding people from the land of Canaan. As we talked about, the land of Canaan is descendants, from Ham, who is cursed, and that's their living is kind of abhorrent and ungodly, and so Abraham is looking to find someone who is God-fearing and follows what the Lord asks them to do. And so the Lord needs to show up in the circumstance and be present in the life of the individual of who will get to marry Isaac. So we get to see in Genesis 24 this theme of the Lord and following what God has to do, of doing something that is very godly by praying out to the Lord. So the servant comes and says, "I'm standing here by the spring of water." And this is Genesis 24:13. "I am standing here by the spring of water, and the daughters of the townspeople are coming out to draw water. Let the girl to whom I shall say, 'Please offer your jar that I might drink.' And who shall say, 'Drink, and I will water your camels.' Let her be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac. By this I shall know that you have shown steadfast love to my master." So he's on this errand trying to find a wife for Isaac, because that's how they did it in their day and time. And in verse 15 it says that God shows up. God answers very quickly. Now in verse 15 it says, "Before he had finished speaking, there was Rebekah." Beautiful Rebekah, this gift of an individual. And he goes on to repeat the story to her, and then continues to repeat that same story over to repeat it to Bethuel and Laban, and they say this has the marks of what God is about. So the marks of God kind of show the hospitality and the kindness, generosity that Rebekah and her family extend. The acceptance of what God is up to in this seeming coincidence that happens almost immediately. This leads to a sense of success and feeling like you're dealing with loyalty and truly deal loyally with me and truly with my master is what is said. And so I think Bethuel influences Laban, to be honest, in this text. We'll look at the character of Laban a little bit later, that he tries to scam Isaac's son Jacob. And he's not always the most upright figure. But Bethuel, the brother to Abraham, is upright. Let's move on to chapter 25. We get to see Abraham in his final days. He remarries and has more offspring. And then when Abraham finally dies at the good and ripe age of 137, how would you like to live that long? No, that's incorrect. He dies at 175, even longer. It was Ishmael who dies at 137 years. So Abraham dies, his sons Isaac and Ishmael bury him. And then that's kind of the last interactions that they really have that are talked about. Isaac and Ishmael go their separate ways. Ishmael goes back to the area between Shur and Havilah, which is likely spanning the northern part of Arabia, current day Saudi Arabia, and that Arabian Peninsula, even maybe a little bit of the Sinai Peninsula. I'm not super sure where that is exactly, and I think people are kind of varying on what they believe that area might be. But it is in some way, shape, or form. It is far southeast of Canaan, and it is not going to interact very much with the people of God's promise who will come in to inhabit the promised land. There is one brief conflict between the descendants of Ishmael and Isaac, and that's after the Exodus as they're wandering in the wilderness to get to the promised land. So, anyways, moving back to Isaac and moving off of Abraham now, he's been put to rest with his wife Sarah and there by the oaks of Mamre. We see that Isaac falls in love immediately with his soon-to-be wife Rebecca, and his heart is consoled, as it says, after his mother's death, which is a strange way to look at it, but I'm glad that he finds love and joy with Rebecca. They have a wonderful life and are able to have two sons. They have twins, Esau and Jacob. So Jacob pulling on the heel of Esau as he is coming out, one who is trying to get there first, but Esau is too strong to overcome him and is the first one who inherits then the birthright and everything that comes with being the firstborn in their culture. Esau's name means hairy. He gets later called Edom for being red, so he's red and hairy. This beastie character who is one who likes to go out into the wilderness and is a good hunter. Jacob's name means he cheats, which he tries to pull away and get his circumstances so that way he can come out on top. And Jacob is literally not on top in this first and during their birth. So in verse 28, we see this kind of tension between Isaac and Rebekah in the sense that Isaac loves Esau and Rebekah loves Jacob. This will be very important when Rebekah kind of helps Jacob come up with a plan to trick Isaac into stealing away Esau's birthright. Esau's blessing as a firstborn, I should say. Because Esau, being kind of an oaf, very physically strong, but not very mentally, kind of mentally weak. We see that Jacob is able to use circumstances to his advantage, which we see as they grow up. Esau comes out one day and he is famished from his work outside. Esau asks for food and Jacob says, "How badly do you want this food?" Jacob offers to trade Esau's birthright and that his sense of inheritance as the firstborn. And Esau agrees and says, "I'm hungry, so what good would it do if I die?" This is very silly because Esau would be able to have food anyways, but Esau just is portrayed here as somebody who is simple-minded and not respectful of his birthright that is due to him through the ancestry. But this is also something, as the people who are writing this are descendants of Jacob, they are setting up the legitimacy of Jacob's heritage. So it's something important to note there. So that is all we have for today. I look forward to talking a little bit more about these characters of Jacob and Esau. And if you have any more questions about this, just feel free to connect with me. I'd love to hear more about what you have to say. So, goodbye.